Hello, everyone. This is literature for Monday, April 20th. You should have read the final section of Perseus, the part called The Return from 127 to 133. And taken the quiz. So if you haven't done that yet, please do that. Pause the video and either read it and take the quiz, or if you already read it, take the quiz, and then come back for a review of the story. Okay. So this last part of the story, you think, well, the adventure's over, but there's more going on the way back. So Perseus has the Medusa's head, and he carries it in a pouch so that when it's not out, it's not dangerous, that they can't turn anything to stone when it's covered. So he flies back to the island of the island of the Hesperides to dance with the three nymphs of the West, because he promised he'd do that. They dance all night. They have, big party, and he's excited because he's done his first quest and he was successful, and so they dance all night, and during that time he even manages to lift a golden apple from Hera's tree, and they notice, but they don't care. They're so happy. But when in the morning, when the mist clears, Atlas, who's still holding up the sky, can see that his daughters are enjoying themselves dancing in the orchard. And for some reason, he doesn't like that, can't stand that. So he starts stamping his foot, and that makes the earth shake, and the earth roars. And he shrugged his shoulders, which made comets fall down, and flaming bolts of rock bombard the orchard, setting fire to the apple trees. So Perseus figures he's got to stop this. He flies straight towards Atlas's mighty face, and then he pulls the Medusa's head out of its pouch, holds it up so the Titan can see it, and Atlas turns to stone. Actually, a mountain, Mount Atlas, which, as it says, is still there today. Then he says goodbye to the beautiful nymphs of the West, and he promises to come again every midsummer to dance and party with them again. Then he starts flying towards home, and he notices kind of a strange sight. He sees a girl wearing magnificent jewels, and heading straight for her is this monster, this sea monster. And there's a crowd of people on the shore watching all this happen, including a tall man and woman wearing crowns. So Perseus drops to the earth, takes off his cap of darkness he'd been wearing, and asks one of the people in the crowd, what's going on? So, actually, he asked the king, the man wearing the crown. So it turns out that the king is Cepheus, king of Joppa, and his wife Cassiopeia had done one of those silly things. She had said that she and her daughter Andromeda were more beautiful than any of the sea's Nereids. And so the Nereids get offended, and they go to Poseidon, and they want her punished. So Poseidon sends this sea monster that starts to tear apart the kingdom and the coast and the ships, and just wreak havoc. And when the king goes to see an oracle, the oracle says the only way to stop this is to sacrifice your daughter to the sea monster. And he said, the king feels like, well, he's got to do that because he can't let his kingdom be destroyed. So he chains her to a rock, and the beast is swimming closer and closer. So Perseus intervenes. He attacks the sea monster with his sickle sword, and rides the monster and hacks away until its head's cut off. Monster sinks into the sea, and Perseus sets Andromeda free, and then he brings her back to her father and mother briefly, because he's going to claim her as his wife, which Cepheus isn't too happy about because he doesn't know who Perseus is. But as Perseus says, you were going to sacrifice your daughter to the sea monster, and I'm the one who saved her. So Perseus brings Andromeda with him home, and he gets there actually just in time, because King Polydectes had used this whole thing as a trick to get Perseus to leave. And while he's gone, King Polydectes has arranged to marry Perseus's mother, Danae, who doesn't really like Polydectes or want to marry him. So Perseus figures out what's going on right away, shouts to his mother well, he shouts to King Polydectes, hey, I brought you your wedding gift. Remember what I promised you? And so um, King Polydectes motions to his guards, who get their swords out. One has a javelin about to be plunged into Perseus's back when Perseus pulls the Medusa's head out after telling his mother to close her eyes so she won't see the Medusa's head. So she doesn't turn to stone, but King Polydectes turns to stone. Everybody in the crowd turns to stone, including, as it turns out, Perseus's grandfather, Acrisius, who is one of the guests at the wedding. So um, when Danae tells Perseus that he's just, turned his grandfather to stone, doesn't feel too bad about it because the grandfather wasn't very kind to his mom or to him, obviously. But it brings up something that fairly often happens in Greek myths, and that would be, an oracle gives a prophecy, and maybe it's not a real good one, but when the person who's given the prophecy tries to avoid it, as King Chryseus did, locking his daughter in the tower, setting her adrift in a boat along with her son. When you try to avoid the prophecy, you end up causing it to come true, because if he hadn't done those things, King Polydectes would never have met Danae. Chryseus never would have come to the wedding, never would have been turned to stone. So it was just a side issue to that. So Perseus introduces his mother to Danae to Andromeda, and then he's married. He and Andromeda are married, and then he makes gifts of the bright shield that now has the Medusa's head emblazoned on it, and the cap of darkness he gives back to Hermes. The shield he gives to Athene for the help that they gave him in his quest. He keeps the winged sandals and the new moon sword because he knows he's going to have more adventures as time goes on. And the Medusa's head, he decides to throw it into the sea. It's too dangerous. He's afraid, something bad will happen to it. Something will go turn to stone that he didn't mean to turn to stone. It sinks to the bottom where it floats around the sea, and it ends up making coral wherever it goes, as the story says. Okay, so for Tuesday, we are reading the first part of the next myth, which is Daedalus. Let's see. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong schedule. There it is. Yes, Daedalus Part 1. And as the assignment sheet says, you're reading pages 134 to 139. So the first 5 pages of Daedalus. I think I divided Daedalus into 2 parts. So read that and take the quiz on Daedalus before you watch the next video on Tuesday. And then in the meantime, for now, we read the next section. The next one from Ulysses is kind of a short one. It's sort of a linking chapter called The Wandering Rocks. They sailed out of darkness and into light, and their hearts danced with a joy to see the blue water and the blue sky again, because they just came from the land of the dead. A fair west wind plumped their sails and sped them towards home. If this wind keeps blowing, said Ulysses to himself, perhaps we can skirt the dangerous islands that they spoke of in the land of the dead. Sail right around these sirens and these tide-drinking, man-eating monsters and find our way home without any mishap. True, it was foretold differently, but what of it? How reliable are such prophecies, after all? Ajax and Achilles were always better at fighting than thinking. Why should they be wiser now that they're dead than when they were alive? And Elpenor, my most inept hand, must I take his word for what's going to happen? Why, that fall from the mast must have scattered the few wits that he actually did have. Besides, they were all ghosts down there advising me, and ghosts are pretty gloomy by nature, as everybody knows. They like to frighten people. It's the way they've been trained. No, by the gods, I will not accept all this evil as inevitable, but will stretch my sails to the following wind and speed for Ithaca, his home. At that very moment he heard a strange sound, not a sound the wind makes, nor the water, nor the voice of a man or a gull. He looked about, searching the sky and the water, but he saw nothing. Then he turned over the helm to one of the sailors and climbed the mast. There he could see for miles over the dancing water, and far to the south he saw tiny black things floating, so small he couldn't tell whether he was imagining them or not. But they grew larger even as he watched. And as they came near, the strange moaning, grinding sound grew louder and louder. What are they? He said to himself. They look like rocks, but rocks don't float. Can they be dolphins? Not whales, surely. Whales spout. And all fish are voiceless. What is it then that comes and cries upon the silence of the seas? Another evil spawned by the stubborn god who keeps pursuing me. But what is it? By now the objects were close enough to see, and he saw that they were indeed rocks, a floating reef of rocks, jagged boulders bobbing on the waves like corks, rubbing against each other and making the moaning, grinding sound, and coming fast, driving purposely toward the ship. Port the helm, said Ulysses. The ship swung northward as the rocks pressed from the south. Floating rocks, said Ulysses. Who has seen anything like that? This is a wonder unreported by any traveler. We see a new thing today, and I should like to see the last of it. Are they following us? Are they driven by some intelligence? Or are we caught in a trick of tide that moves them this way? I shall soon see. He took the helm himself then and sailed the ship in a circle to give the rocks a chance to pass by. But to his horror, he saw the rocks begin to circle also, keeping always between him and the open sea to the south. They held the same distance now. He sheered off northward and they followed, keeping the same distance. But when he turned and headed south, they held their place. He saw them loom before his bow, jagged and towering, ready to crush his hull like a walnut. And he had to swing off again and dart away northward as the crew raised a shout of terror. So he set his course north by northwest, thinking sadly, I see that I can avoid nothing that was foretold me. I cannot bear southward around the Isle of the Sun where lurk the demons and monsters I've been warned against, but must speed toward them as swiftly as toward a rendezvous with loved ones. These rocks shepherd me. They herd this vessel as a stray sheep is herded by the shepherd's dog, driving me toward that which the vengeful gods have ordained. So be it then. If I cannot flee, then I must dare. Heroes are made, I see, when retreat is cut off from them. So be it. He set his sail for the island of the Sun Titan, which men call Thrinacia, and which we know now as Sicily. All through the night they sailed. In the darkness they lost sight of the floating rocks, but they could hear them clashing and moaning and keeping pace with the ship. So these rocks refused to let him go home. Has to go towards the dangers. So we will see what happens tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and we'll watch for another video tomorrow.